Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The federal government wants to build, and it's passed Bill C-5 to do that. But First Nations leaders say they will need consultation and consent. We'll talk to Regional Chief in BC, Teegee, who is meeting with the Prime Minister about this week. And we're asking you, is Canada going about building and boosting the economy in the right way? Plus, many Canadians are getting behind the Elbows Up movement, but what about when it comes to the arts and entertainment? Are we boosting our own music, shows, and art? We'll talk to two artists and take your calls after 12:30. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. The First Nations Summit begins today in Ottawa, where meetings are set up between federal politicians and representatives of First Nations communities to discuss Bill C-5. And that's the law meant to fast-track what are called nation-building infrastructure projects. Prime Minister Mark Carney was asked about this at a press conference earlier today.
Bill literally just received, well, in the last few weeks, as you know, received royal assent, so it became law. The bill and the law, as it now is enabling legislation. The first thing it enables is consultations about what are we actually talking about when we say nation-building projects. And tomorrow, the first part of that engagement, it's not a consultation tomorrow, but the first part of that engagement, in fact, it starts this afternoon in Ottawa with a series of First Nations rights holders, other interested First Nations groups, including the AFN, obviously, is that engagement about the modalities, how this can work, how we work together, what are the priorities. That's before any consultation on any specific project or types of projects. And also before, even if there is a project or when there is projects identified, consultations around the conditions around those projects that must be fulfilled for them to be built, and then moving forward from that.
Now, the bill allows Cabinet to quickly grant federal approvals for big projects that are deemed to be in the national interest. That includes things like mines, ports, and pipelines. A number of First Nations, though, are opposing the bill, and they say they were excluded from much of the consultation process. 9 Ontario First Nations are asking for an injunction against the federal bill, as well as a similar one in that province, which is called Bill 5. And these chiefs say both represent a clear and present danger to First Nations self-determination rights to way of life on their territories. Well, you can call us with your thoughts. The government wants to build in order to boost the economy. Is it going about it in the right way? And does the U.S. trade war make building these projects more urgent? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone or by email bctoday@cbc.ca. And you can comment on our TikTok Live as well. Joining me now from Gatineau, Quebec is BC Assembly First Nations Regional Chief Teegee. Good afternoon, Regional Chief. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
I know you're very busy there, so thanks for taking the time. Let's start with the federal bill, C-5. And to break it down for our listeners, what would this mean for First Nations in BC?
Well, C-5 just does not acknowledge or recognize a consultation process nor a consent-based process for First Nations. And, the way it is functionally, it is where a process in terms of legislation that approves a project prior to even being reviewed and or making decisions upon, which sets a dangerous precedence, and certainly it doesn't follow the United Nations Declaration Act. So for First Nations, we're quite concerned, not only in British Columbia, but certainly, as you stated, in Ontario as well.
Does this mean, and I know there will be different positions, right, from different First Nations, but does this mean that inherently there will be opposition to any kind of project?
I don't think necessarily, but there are First Nations potentially approval of some of these projects. So C-5 would perhaps help their project. But I think overall the general sentiment is that there are many First Nations concerned about what a national interest project is, and clearly defined. And then further to that is what is the process to get approval? And certainly the consent provisions that is a federal law right now, as in Bill C-15, the United Nations Declaration Act, provides for free, prior, and informed consent.
Prime Minister Mark Carney told reporters in June that what he would like to do during these talks is lay out a type of project and solicit input on how it could move forward. So there's a shared understanding on all sides of what's possible. What would you like to come out of these meetings tomorrow with the Prime Minister?
Well, certainly not skirt the issue of an environmental assessment. I think it's really important that an assessment is brought forward before any decisions are made. I think further to that is to uphold rights that were fought for many years and decades, with and also further to that is free, prior, and informed consent of projects, and certainly as the Bill C-5 is laid out, it doesn't do that. And what I would like to see is functionally how can this bill change to allow a better process to move forward in terms of how decisions are made. Certainly, I get this existential crisis. Of the tariff war with the United States and also China, but it shouldn't be at the backs of our First Nations people. And what we're asking for is not only ability to make decisions, which is upheld in the United Nations Declaration, and certainly that is part of a recognition of our human rights to really assert our sovereignty and self-determination. So how do we get there? How do we get everybody on the same page in terms of how decisions are made?
Yes, so you mentioned that existential right. There is that is a factor here. The U.S. Tariffs, the 51st state rhetoric from President Donald Trump. I just want to read here some comments from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, which supports the bill, and it says that it rises to meet the moment of the economic crisis that Canada is facing from the United States' unjust war on Canadian goods. And so it goes on to say we cannot have all our eggs in the U.S. economic basket any longer. So is there an urgency that's needed here when it comes to these projects? And can there be a system, as you say, of a process that will meet that urgency?
Well, yeah, if it is an urgency that we're looking at, I think it would have been better served if we were all involved, including First Nations who have rights in this country, and that was proven in many court cases, all the way from Delgamuukw to the Chilcotin case and other court cases. Certainly, we have our abilities to govern ourselves, and the way it should have happened was under the United Nations Declaration Act that, with I believe it's Article 37, was that any development of legislation that affects our rights to make decisions and govern ourselves should have been created together, and certainly that should have happened with bills 14, 15 provincially, and also
In BC.
with this. Yeah, in BC, and also this bill.
It's interesting you talk about court challenges, right? And as you mentioned, we have seen that the Northern Gateway project was canceled after the Federal Court of Appeal overturned its approval, and it cited lack of cogent, inadequate consultation with First Nations. So are we heading into a kind of uncertainty then? Although this bill would like things to be expedited, do you see uncertainty for potential projects moving forward?
If the current legislation goes through, and potentially that there are projects out there, we know that there are some projects that are very controversial, such as pipelines, that may really come out in terms of what First Nations do to protect those rights. So whether filing a legal court case or really, I suppose, public, really get it out in the public and showing our dismay of not only legislation but potentially the projects. I think perhaps that's really where we're heading to, is challenges in the court system. And also further to that, there's with the federal government, there's proposed cuts to a number of governmental services that were to address, a lot of issues that First Nations are dealing with Indigenous Services Canada. So it really harkens back to what we experienced from 2005 to 2015, where there was major cuts to the funding and services to First Nations, and also I think back then was Bill C-45 in terms of really granting rights to major projects, and that I'm reminded of that in the current situation we're in right now. So I certainly hope it doesn't go that way, but it seems to me that what I'm hearing from other regions, as you said, Ontario's fighting litigation. I'm sure other First Nations will probably intervene on those cases, and other First Nations and other regions are really dismayed in terms of being involved in terms of how decisions are made.
My guest is BC Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief Terry Teegee. We are asking you, Regional Chief Terry Teegee is in Gatineau, Quebec, ahead of meetings tomorrow with the Prime Minister, and this includes First Nations chiefs at the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau, all to discuss Bill C-5. And as you've heard, First Nations leaders oppose Bill C-5, and this is the bill that aims to expedite infrastructure projects that would be deemed seen by the government as in the national interest. So we're asking you, is the government going about the building in the right way? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And let us know, too, if you think that the U.S. trade war makes building these projects more urgent, too. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. You can comment on our TikTok Live as well. Let's take a couple of calls right now. Blair is joining us from up in Smithers. Hi, Blair. What are your thoughts?
Good afternoon. Like I say, I live in what they refer to as the Golden Triangle, where the majority of the pipelines and the mining will occur. And I've spent 35 years in and around heavy industry, so my perspective comes from that. I'm for jobs and for development, but be honest, when Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre start talking about shovels in the ground and boots ready, they make me a little nervous, because I don't think either of them knows which end of the shovel to hold, and a set of work boots will last those two a lifetime. My big concern is sort of with the rhetoric that's going on in the media with the government, is they're creating kind of just sort of getting people whipped into a frenzy, and it's kind of a Wild West mentality, gold rush mentality. And, the wartime rhetoric, which Mark Carney tries to sound like Winston Churchill, I find that a little bit amusing. And I'm going to let other people like your guest speak about the Indigenous rights, and there will be people, I'm sure, calling about the environmental concerns. Mine is more about the industrial side of it and the scope size of these projects. And what I'm worried is when I hear the talk about national interest. Well, we heard that one once before with Kinder Morgan and Trowns Mountain. And my big issue is that it ended up costing 4 times what they said. Industry wouldn't touch it. The taxpayer ended up paying for it, largely to appease our neighbors to the east. And I'm just concerned that they're going to maybe they should shift it down a gear and try and not to get everyone so scared of what's going on. There's legitimate concerns. How do you deal with a loose cannon like Donald Trump? But I just find that it's getting a bit too overboard on the urgency and the national scope, and legitimate concerns are going to be steamrolled. So that's all I really have to say. I'll let everybody else have a chance.
Blair, thank you so much for your call in Smithers. And let's head to Prince George now. And Ira is joining us. Hi, Ira. Thanks for calling in. What are your thoughts on the government's goal of building in order to boost the economy? Is it going about in the right way?
Well, personally, I don't think they're doing it the right way, quote unquote. They're definitely steamrolling the First Nations people, and I really do believe that in 2025, that's the year we're in right now, we as a First Nation people and Indigenous people have been getting steamrolled for so long with our rights. There's previous cases that have been gone to court, in the Supreme Court, that is, with Delgamuukw. Delgamuukw, we have our rights to exercise, and we have been and trying to exercise our rights underneath our ayuk, our laws in the First Nations in our Gitxsan way. And we've been steamrolled for so long that, this is going to be another way for them to benefit for Canada, and with no consultation to us, such as this environmental assessment that has been gone through for our pipeline, this PGRT that has been approved already. And may I add, with this assessment, this pipeline will be going underneath my territory, and that would be our territory of the Liquids territory and the Sinwideen territory. And there is going to be over 200 creeks and rivers that are they're going to be affected by this pipeline going under these rivers. And these are fish-bearing rivers. These are plants. Plants are medicines that are going in there. Everything that we need to sustain ourselves for our quote-unquote way of life.
Is this the pipeline that Alberta is wanting to see to the coast? Is that what you're
That's
talking
correct.
about?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, the one that's supposed to be going to Prince Rupert, but it's actually going to the Nisga'a territory right now, and we've been steamrolled, like such as the other caller said, right? It's 2025, like for real. Like how are we still living in this steamrolled mentality of just let's just steamroll the Indigenous people, and maybe let's deal with the consequences after. And the consequences meaning that the court systems will push us off, and finally when the pipeline's going in, and then they'll finally say, okay, let's go to court with these guys, right? Such as the Whitsett. The Whitsett people, they're still going to court to this day. Molly, she's been affected for the rest of her life with this, and it's quite devastating for all of us.
This is the LNG project. Ira,
Yes.
good to hear from you. Thanks so much for the call.
You're welcome.
Ira calling from the Gitxsan Nation and at Prince George. Regional Chief Teegee, Terry Teegee is with me, who's joining us from Gatineau, Quebec, where he is set to meet with the Prime Minister tomorrow. Want to ask you about that. This here in BC, what's been a focus of a lot of discussion is this what the Premier of Alberta would like to see, this pipeline for bitumen from Alberta to the North Coast. And what we've heard from David Eby, we've heard sort of there is no project right now. So no real sort of position, but not wanting to talk about a project that may or that doesn't have a proponent at the moment. What are your thoughts on that proposal right now from Alberta's Premier?
Yeah, I think, I've been down this road before. I used to be the tribal chief of a Carrier-Secani Tribal Council, and, many of my people and at the Tribal Council opposed the project, and for good reasons about the environment. It was not only a diluted bitumen pipeline, but there was also bitumen going the other way. So really there was two pipelines. I think, a project of that magnitude is very difficult. Like many other pipelines, you transects many First Nations territories. Further to that, the footprint could potentially be quite large in terms of going across British Columbia. So there's a lot of considerations in terms of figuring out what the implications are and what the risks are. And also further to that, many First Nations are looking at benefits like other pipelines such as CGLP and, as your previous caller, PGRT, which is another LNG project. So I think it's really important to consider everything, all the aspects, and let alone our commitments to to climate change, the Paris commitments, and further to that, trying to reduce our footprint on in terms of hydrocarbons. And I think it's really important to consider what our goals are, not only as a country, but I think to your previous speaker who talked from Smithers. I think he brings up a good point about, not having this gold rush mentality. Far too often, whether it's mining or we've definitely seen it in forestry. My background is forestry. A real gold rush mentality that there's a lot of liquidation of our resources in this country, and I think we should have better planning in terms of how we can take the maximum, I suppose, advantage of all our resources and not liquidate it at the lowest price.
We will watch to see certainly what comes of these meetings tomorrow in Gatineau. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
That is BC Assembly First Nations Regional Chief Terry Teegee. And some comments now coming in on TikTok. 555 Faring Lau writes, I'm absolutely disgusted with my government. I know we have to toe the U.S. line to an extent. Put the lack of solid action in regards to these atrocities is mind-blowing. I would say there has to be some give and take with First Nations as usual. We have to make progress. And Joanne writes, the devil is always in the details. It's shocking to anyone that we find ourselves at this juncture after 150 plus years. Here we go again. Thanks for your emails and your comments on our TikTok Live. Much more on this to come on CBC. It is now just about 12:28. You're with BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks for being with us. And yesterday we talked about cycling safety after 2 cycling deaths in BC over the last week. Have refocused discussion on cycling safety as well as infrastructure. And we took your calls yesterday. Here are some of your emails now on that topic. Christoph writes, what is missing from the discussion here is that these deaths are not a stroke of fate. They are caused by drivers of motor vehicles. This needs to be addressed openly. Instead of discussing how cyclists should announce where they want to pass, the discussion needs to be about making sure that people don't get killed while using the roads legally. And Roman writes from North Vancouver, the simplest solution is for car drivers to be more patient. They are already in a comfortable and climate-controlled environment. Lee wrote us about pedestrian awareness of wheelchair users. I utilize an electric wheelchair. Pedestrian walk lights and crosswalks in downtown Victoria are very busy, and crosswalkers do not adhere to walking on the right side of the crosswalk. Wheelchair users are below common eye level, and pedestrians coming toward us are often on their cell phones, deep in conversation or in pensive thought, and scattered across the entire crosswalk. A few days ago, I veered a bit to avoid collision with a woman crossing toward me. As I did, I clipped the heel of a senior gentleman, and I watched as he recouped his fall before he hit the pavement. We chatted, both of us thankful he was okay. Just a simple heads up, please. Thanks very much for all of your emails on that. We'll continue to take them on our email, bctoday@cbc.ca. You're with BC Today here on CBC, live on Radio 1, CBC Television. We are live streaming as well. You can watch us on YouTube at CBC British Columbia, or you can use the CBC News app. And you're watching us on TikTok Live as well. Thanks for being with us there. And coming up in our next half hour, we're going to talk about whether the elbows up movement needs to kind of set the stage for arts and entertainment. Does it need to turn its focus there? Is it getting enough attention? Canadian music, Canadian arts, Canadian films and television shows. We will talk about that. What's needed to boost them? And is there one that you're a fan of right now? And we'll have that conversation with a couple of artists coming up in our next half hour. Right now it is 12:30. Time for the CBC News Update. And here's Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. The man convicted of second-degree murder in the gruesome killing of popular Kitsilano Park caretaker Justice Daniel has been sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 12 years. 54-year-old Brent White was found guilty in May following a trial where his self-defense explanation was rejected and no other motive was offered or determined. Some Chilliwack businesses and apartments have been destroyed after a fire quickly spread through a section of the downtown early this morning. All 6 fire halls were eventually called in, with 36 crew members attacking the fire from outside the building. No one was hurt, and the cause of the blaze is being investigated. And Surrey police say 3 men were shot and injured in what appears to be a case of road rage. Police say the victims were in a vehicle when a white Tesla Model 3 with Ontario license plates pulled up and fired at them. They were taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. And now the forecast on the north coast, mainly sunny this afternoon with a high of 18. Highs reaching 21 with a chance of showers and thunderstorms in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, showers with a high of 21 as well. Highs from 23 to 29 with a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, mainly sunny with a high of 31. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, sunny this afternoon with highs from 25 to 31 inland. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Whew. 31.
31.
That's
pretty warm out.
Yeah, that's sweltering for sure. I don't know if you have seen, I feel like I'm seeing more of these like neck fans. People are wearing them around their neck. Yeah.
Yes.
Have you seen them too? Okay,
I
so
have.
it's not just me.
No.
I saw some I was at the Squamish Nation Youth Powwow on the weekend and saw a few there. I have tried them myself. Have you tried it yourself?
I have not tried one, no. And
Oh, I'm very
what's your
curious.
verdict?
So my verdict is, I think they work, but if it's really hot, it's really just blowing hot air at you. So,
Yeah, that
makes
sense.
you still have to get somewhere cooler.
Sure.
But they're, I don't know, they're getting kind of trendy. I'm seeing them everywhere.
Yeah, there seems to be one. Weren't the handheld ones
Yes,
kind of big for a while?
there's
And then-
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, little personal fan devices. Okay, well, thank you very much, Rob.
Sure.
I've given my verdict on the neck fans. That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. This is BC Today on CBC Radio 1. Here's what's coming up for our listeners to On the Coast in Metro Vancouver.
Michelle, hi there. It's Gloria Makarenko here, and I just wanted to flag a few things we've got lined up for On the Coast this afternoon. You know, this week we've been talking about the bracket, the search for the best symbol for BC, and yesterday we were pitting cherries against peaches. I'm talking Okanagan cherries versus Okanagan peaches, of course. Well, today it's BC Ferries versus the SkyTrain. What would be a better symbol for BC? So you can vote in the bracket today, of course, but we are going to bring you an advocate for each of those. One for BC Ferries, one for SkyTrain today. Also, the East Side Arts Festival is back, so we're going to be talking about that this afternoon. I hope you can join us between 3 and 6 for On the Coast.
$12:34 now. You're with BC Today. And musical neuters, they're back at CBC in Vancouver. So on Wednesdays throughout the summer, you can come down, join us on the CBC Plaza at 700 Hamilton Street and enjoy a live music performance. And today is especially fun because on stage are the children's music performers, O Clementine. And right now, our BC Today intern, Beta Chan, joins us live from the CBC Plaza. Hi, Beta. So I see, because we have a kids performer, lots of kids sitting on the grass there, and I understand you're with some kids yourself right now.
Hi, Michelle. Yes, I'm joined by lots of kids here at front of the CBC Plaza. I have Elsie, Bob, and Milo here. Can you tell us how old you are?
I am 10 years old. I'm 8 years old. I'm this old.
Is that 3? Oh, wow. And what is your favorite thing to do in the summer?
I go to a family camp called CVEC, and there's lots of activities to do.
That sounds super fun. And Elsie, I saw you jamming out earlier. How do you know O Clementine?
Well, my mom is friends with Jess, and we came here with Milo, who is our neighbor.
Oh, that's so fun. Milo, I saw you eating French toast earlier. Was it yummy? Amazing. And what is your favorite song?
I like Man-Child by Sabrina Carpenter.
That might be on my playlist as well. Do you have a favorite song?
No, I don't have a favorite song.
That's okay. Maybe you'll find one today. Thank you for joining us in front of the CBC Plaza today at the Musical Nooners with O Clementine.
Oh, Beta, that was awesome. I don't know that I would classify Sabrina Carpenter as a kids performer, but there you go. She has fans from all ages. Beta, thanks so much. That's Beta
Thank you,
Chan.
Michelle.
Beta Chan joining us live, our intern joining us live from outside on the CBC Plaza. And she was joined by Bob, Elsie, and Milo, who held up 3 fingers to show that he was 3 years old. That was adorable. Thanks so much for that. So yeah, you can come down right now. You've got another half an hour or so to enjoy O Clementine, and we'll have another musical nooner for you next Wednesday here at the CBC. So come on down and see us then. It is 12:37 now here on BC Today. Well, with many Canadians leaning into the Elbows Up movement, some artists are wondering if that can translate into the arts and entertainment. And BC is a hub for the arts, but we also know many artists here struggle with things like cost or studio space. Now, today, the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture has just announced that it's increasing the BC Arts Council to more than $40 million in 2025 and 2026. So it's just announced that more than 1,300 artists and arts groups in BC have received about $37 million in grants through the BC Arts Council in 2024. And the province says that helps to bring their work to life and strengthens community connections. Okay, we're asking you right now, does Elbows Up apply to arts and entertainment for you? Have you taken to supporting more Canadian arts and entertainment amid the Elbows Up movement? And how do you think we can support artists in BC? Is there a favorite one for you that you'd like to shout out to? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your phone or email us bctoday@cbc.ca or just comment on our TikTok live as well. I'm joined by 2 guests right now. Here in studio with me is Jilian Tolzmann, an actor, writer, and director. Hello, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And joining us on Zoom is Heather Laura Gray, who's an Emmy Award-winning choreographer. Heather, thanks so much for being with us.
Such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, when you hear Elbows Up, Jillian, what does that mean to you as an actor, as a writer, director? Does it apply?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the way I've always looked at my career coming in, especially in Vancouver with our film industry, we're in a unique place where a lot of productions come shoot here, but we don't have very many TV shows that are actually set in Vancouver. We're often telling American stories, pretending we're New York, which is really exciting to see how people transform our city. But it was always interesting going into my career, being curious about, okay, well, what opportunities are there for me here as an artist, not just serving American Hollywood productions coming in, but can I generate my own work? So I've always had that mindset of let's elevate Canadian stories. So then when I saw the Elbows Up movement happening, it made me really excited because I thought, okay, finally, we're heading in this direction where we're talking about, yes, we love everyone internationally we're supporting, but also how can we elevate our own people? And I think the arts really is the center of that.
Wow. And what about for you, Heather, as a choreographer? What does Elbows Up mean to you?
Well, I definitely agree with what Jillian said. And, you know, for me, it's about Elbows Up is like making room for ourselves that in this market, this is the beauty of, you know, where we're at right now with Hollywood. I mean, there's so much now being made internationally. It's no longer just one location.
Right.
There are many people trying to get work, you know, in Canada from LA, and you know, I get emails and calls all the time of like, is there any chance I can get some work? So we are definitely in a great place to start to really build our own foundation and yeah, exactly, tell Canadian stories and not feel like it's you know, less than, or it's just it's empowering. This Elbows Up is like we're making room for, like, we have so much to offer. We have had a lot of us who have worked on American shows have incredible training. Like, we're great, you know, craft people.
Yeah.
You know?
And I can almost see you choreographing a dance right now with the elbows up. Like, take it away from hockey.
I can't help it.
Yeah. Well, and you're a picture of success yourself, right? Like you've won an Emmy Award. You've worked on shows like big shows, Monster High, Riverdale. You've worked with Jojo Siwa, who my daughter would be excited about that. But these are all U.S. based. So what's that like for you? What's it been like growing your career? You're able to stay here, but having these productions come from the States.
Yeah, I mean, it's something new. I mean, in the past, it would never have happened because usually with larger projects, they would bring their key person, if it was a musical or whatever, from LA. And they still do. But, I think there was so much that happened with the pandemic and, trying to make a lot happen during that time. And even before, there was just more opportunity for consideration for somebody locally that, they believe that we have the talent and they'll look at us as collaborators. So I got those opportunities. I worked so hard to just make sure that, I had the skill set and could support, what they were asking. And bit by bit over time, I was granted more and more, opportunity to really be collaborating with, directors like John Ridley, who won an Academy Award for 12 Years a Slave, and working with that level of talent. So that's an amazing, opportunity that you would never, plan for. But at the same time, it would be so wonderful to have our own people that we're building on that level, because so many of us that are on that level go to the U.S. because it's a bigger market.
Yeah, well, there's that as well, isn't it? I want to ask you about that. What keeps you here, and how can we keep you here? But Jilian, what does it take to get a Canadian project off the ground?
Yeah, it's really challenging. I mean, I'm approaching it from the student producer perspective. So there are grants and stuff you can apply for. I found because grant funding is a very challenging thing and often you need one person just committed to grant funding because that's the whole process there, is I would often see if I had any leftover money from scholarships and stuff for my schooling that I could maybe shoot some money over with, which does make money really tight, especially living in Vancouver. Yeah, especially with our cost of living, which, affects everyone, but artists especially, because not only are we running our artistic career, which is more than a full-time job, but we also often need day jobs, which you'll hear people talk about. But what I do often is, because I also work in marketing, because there's my day job. So I am able to coordinate sponsorships with local companies. And, it's tough with the economy. It's definitely harder the past few years compared to pre-COVID because everyone's shorter of what resources they can give. But I find a lot of in-kind sponsorships where people are like, oh, we're going to lend you our camera or we're going to provide catering. That's a really great way we can give people exposure and they can provide us with assets we need without giving us money. So yeah, that's been the main way I've sponsored my projects, and that's the way you get it off the ground. And then once you've developed your career, you can go pitch to various theaters and stuff to see hey, will you put on my production, or, eventually some networks. But there isn't really ways to fund Canadian film in Canada other than Telefund and those other grant programs. It's very hard to get big network attention to get a union show going.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how do you get to that point? Because yes, we've just heard about this announcement, funding for the BC Arts Council. But how do you get to a point where, people listening might say, the arts need to be able to sustain themselves, right? They need to have enough of an audience so that the projects are paying for themselves and are lucrative.
For sure. I mean, that's why, personally, I find it easier to have my story told in theater versus in film. Because the thing is with a film, you have to pay all your upfront costs. And to monetize a film in Canada is pretty tricky. Because you either have to find, okay, are we giving it to a streaming service or getting a distributor to coordinate that? And that's very challenging. As a Canadian, there's really not much space for that. Or you find a network to distribute it. But even with a distributor for an independent Canadian project to get money back, you're lucky if you even recoup any of your costs. Whereas for theater, if we sell out, we can sometimes make money back. It really depends how many grants we had, how much money we had to put in. But, there's a lot more return value on ticket sales because then you have a tangible thing you're selling versus a film, which is interesting because people always think film makes more money than theater. And I mean, in terms, if we're looking at union wages, yes. But if we're looking at, I have a project and I'm trying to monetize this product, it's not always like that.
I'm learning so much. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. We are taking your calls as well. So if you're watching or listening, you can call us and let us know, do you think the Elbows Up movement needs to also apply to the arts and entertainment? And how can we better support Canadian arts? Is there a musician or an artist or a filmmaker that you would like to shout out to as well? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone or email bctoday@cbc.ca or just comment on our TikTok live as well. And my guests are Jilian Tolzmann, a multi-disciplinary artist, an actor, writer, and director. Heather Laura Gray is an Emmy award-winning choreographer. And so Heather, when you hear that, what support do you think is needed so that you can use all the skills and talent that you have toward a Canadian-made project?
Yeah, that's fabulous news to hear what the BC Arts Council has, like the progress I think that will come from that will be massive. Because I loved reading that it's about infrastructure, because what we have in place doesn't necessarily support what the outcome. So, culturally too, for us, I'm saying like Canadians, like we're definitely online a lot more. There's a lot more, to actually get people to come out and see live work. It's like, how do we engage our audience? And that's content, but that doesn't necessarily have to be, some people get, really worried about, well, then everything's just going to be commercialized and we're just going to have fluffy arts. And it's like, no, we need to have a place or a way to engage our audiences in both that art and entertainment way for whoever or whatever they're looking for. But if it's not built into a family dynamic, right, of like, we're going to go see something live. We're going to go, and if they can't afford it, right? And if they can't, so there's this whole kind of infrastructure that is kind of supporting, I would say, like the inability to really engage a lot with arts, which you can see in other countries, it's a lot more developed. So that being said, it's like I've worked also in contemporary dance and live theater and seen that support network really just not having enough to be able to get to people. You can create the work, but you can't actually connect. There's nothing saying like, hey, come to this, wonderful work that you get to explore live and direct. So, but in terms of me, like creating, film work and whatnot, and collaborating with in film and television, yeah, it really does require. I love the elbows up movement because it requires us to really say, Canadians to say, hey, I'm willing to invest in you. Like Jillian was saying, I'm going to give you a camera. I'm going to give you, it's about investing in our people so that they can rise to that place. What unfortunately we've been very used to, especially being like, Hollywood North, is everyone's used to the dollars. So if we don't have like equity investors, people that have a lot of money who are interested in really developing film that is amazing and top notch for Canada, we're kind of stuck in that American system of distribution and support. So
and staffing,
yeah, exactly. So it's really, I think it's exciting. It's really exciting, but I think it's about us understanding the investment in our people, the person, the artist that is actually pulling everybody up the mountain to create something not ever actually been seen yet. And there's producers like the producers that have done like The Witch, and I think they did The Apprentice, that the Canadian companies that are getting there. They're really doing that work. So it's happening.
When you talk about that infrastructure, I heard that a lot during the Hollywood writers' strike. The fact that we do provide the supporting cast, if you will, when it comes to these productions. How do we move forward on that and to create that infrastructure? So there's that investment, and there's a fandom as well that gets people out to see the performances.
For sure. Well, that really resonates with my approach for marketing, because I always say, you have to build your community and have your people following you, not just trying to attract customers, but loyal supporters. And I really love what you were saying about the infrastructure, because I think that's so key. And what I found is the theater industry has been really supportive in my artistic development, in the sense there's workshops and programs and mentorships in place. Because yes, I'm getting my post-secondary education, but having these opportunities where I can go get mentored by people who are actually working. And not only am I getting free training, but sometimes they'll even offer an honorarium, so I will get paid. That way I don't have to go do a day job during that period of time. I can just focus on whatever I'm learning. And I think more programs like that are huge, because we need to have people trained for cast, crew, and making sure we have talented people. That way, when a big concert comes to town, we actually have crew here. If people can't afford to be living here as these like different crew jobs and stuff, when a concert comes to town, you're not going to have quality trained people to put on a show, or same for your music festival, same for the fireworks, all these things. Like, it's not just about us putting on musicals or creating films. It's also about having infrastructure to make Vancouver an interesting and fun place.
It's amazing to hear about the tentacles of it, like just how much it permeates all these other things as well. As you say now, Jillian, you were just talking about the support from the theater community. We have Daniel calling us from Vancouver who would like to talk about the Vancouver Fringe Festival on Vancouver Island, or just the Vancouver Fringe Festival. Daniel, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to plug the September Vancouver Fringe Festival. It's a great place for local artists as well as artists from across Canada and internationally. And it's mostly one or two person shows, but also larger production.
Absolutely. And yes, of course, on Granville Island. I was a little bit confused because I saw island, so I thought, does that mean Vancouver Island? But of course, Vancouver Fringe Festival is so well known here in Vancouver. And so yourself, how are you involved?
I've got a show in the September Festival. It's a musical theater production, and it's set on a balcony of a cafe by Granville Island, outdoor balcony.
Yeah. And what do you think of what's needed to continue this tradition of the Vancouver Fringe Fest, Daniel?
Well, the big thing is to expand the outreach of the festival. One of the things they're doing this year is having a kids program.
Right,
so the Fringe is kind of known for being, very edgy, and sometimes the language is a bit intense. But the Fringe has a lot of different stuff and appeals to all ages and all tastes, really. And so this year they're doing 4 to 12. They're asking artists if their show is suitable for 4 to 12, and so that more kids can come in and see the Fringe. And when they become teenagers or young adults, they'll keep coming to the Fringe and maybe start doing their own shows, because the Fringe is like a starting place for young aspiring actors. If anybody saw the musical Sixth in Vancouver, which is a fabulous musical, that started at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Wow. Daniel, thanks very much for the call. Really cool and interesting to hear about, expanding the audience to kids. What are your thoughts on that?
So I volunteer at the Fringe Festival, so it was really exciting to hear someone bring that up. I just want to say, we're talking about can you provide money? Can you provide sponsorships to artists? But I know a lot of people are strapped for cash right now. So the other really amazing way you can help artists is by volunteering at local theaters or arts festivals, including the Fringe. And that is an awesome way you can go support these shows, seeing them for free without having to pay, because you are giving your time instead. And that's a huge help because they have a huge volunteer team. And then, the Fringe is a really exciting opportunity because it gives artists an opportunity to try things out without having to have a big theater backing them up. Last year, it's interesting that they're trying to plug more kid-friendly content this year because last year, I think it was Best Audience Choice. It was done by a show done by some of my friends called Camp Gone Away. And it was this cool summer camp show. And really, it was for all ages. I really enjoyed it. But it was one of the few kid-friendly shows that the festival had. So it's really exciting to see that they saw that success and are now bringing it forward.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah. And what about for you, Heather? What went through your mind listening to Daniel there?
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's the thing about, we're talking about, edgy versus children versus
right.
At this point, our audiences, I don't want to say it's silos, but we have a lot of people who have different taste, right? Because of the internet, everything's been developed. Everyone's kind of developing in different areas.
Yes.
Of what they are drawn to. So I think that that's also part of the equation, right? Is variety, obviously within how, artists are expressing. We're just making sure. And I think that that's what we're seeing with the BC Arts Council is really making sure that there's a diverse support for all types of art making. Yeah.
Before we go, I want to ask you both, we've been talking about the infrastructure here, and we're called Hollywood North because of it. But how do we make sure that what happens so often is that people leave and go down to the machine that is Hollywood. So what is needed, and basically what's keeping you here? What needs to continue and happen to ensure that that artists like yourselves stay in BC? Yeah, why don't we start with you, Jillian?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing you can do is just go see Canadian shows, whether you're going to see Canadian independent films at film festivals or you're going to see theater productions. Just go be a patron, buy a ticket. Or if that's not accessible to you, volunteer, and then you can get complimentary tickets and then also be giving your time to the theater. So that's really the best way to do it. But then also, if there's any companies watching that are looking to get a bit more exposure, look for artists to partner with. Because some of my sponsors, I always do my outreach. I write my cover letter saying, hey, we're doing this project. Here's an exposure opportunity for you. But some of my biggest sponsors I got just because they saw my Instagram posts and reached out to me. So it can go both ways.
Yeah, those Instagram posts, they can go a long way. And what about for yourself, Heather? What do we need to do to keep you here?
I think it's about that infrastructure and finding the ways that we can actually see from start to finish a successful project that will actually financially either be an entertainment with film, be a success, or like we're saying with the arts. But it's really, for me, it's a combination of two things. It's I'm not going to be like emotionally and mentally well living in LA. That's just not going to be, that's not for me. So I had to find that. And I remember feeling young when I was younger. I moved to Toronto and worked there, and it was such a fantastic experience to be there for 5 years. But it was that or LA. And my instincts were like, that's not the place for me. And it took me a while to be okay with that. So many people would try and do that. Oh, you're not from LA? Or you didn't go to LA, it was very much a like something negative, right? And now it feels so great to be like, oh, I fought to stay here and figure it out. And, bit by bit, I was getting more and more support. But I think, yes, I'm working primarily more with the American projects. I would just love to see more of us, getting together, having these conversations even about, and about what is necessary, and also having more people who are in the inside, up in those positions that we don't really
make
understand.
Those decisions. I'm going to jump in. Exactly. Thanks so much to both of you. What a great discussion. Really good to have you.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.
Jilian Tolzmann and Heather Laura Gray. And thanks so much to Daniel, who gave us a call as well.